Welcome to Commercial Conversations Over Coffee, the show where two college dropouts turned real estate millionaires discuss all aspects of commercial real estate investing. Now, welcome your hosts, Tyler Cobble and apartment guy Bruce Petersen.
Welcome everybody to the very first episode of Commercial Conversations Over Coffee. I am Tyler Cobble, joined by my good friend, mentor, business partner, Bruce Petersen. Bruce, what's going on, man?
Not a whole lot, brother. You said coffee, so I thought I'll give a shameless plug to my buddy Eddie Wilson. And because coffee, okay, we're not going to do a lot of that stuff, but I couldn't resist.
Yeah, there you go. What is that? Is that the coffee that you're drinking right now?
Well, I'm actually drinking tea, but I have it in a pretty because coffee mug.
Oh, so very first episode, you're already not drinking coffee. Should we just change the name to Commercial Conversations while Tyler drinks coffee?
I got my yerba mate, which will get me buzzing soon. But yeah, I've already had my cup of coffee this morning.
Yeah, this is my second. Mine is a local favorite, Retrograde Coffee. This is their bottled version of the iced coffee, which is hands down my favorite. But we are not here to talk about coffee, are we? We are here to talk about commercial real estate. So, Bruce, why don't you kind of tell everybody why we decided to do this show?
Well, we wanted to take a different approach, really. Both of us do podcasts all the time. I probably record 50 to 100 different podcasts as a guest. And so many, Gary Vaynerchuk, everybody's out there telling everybody, you got to start a podcast. I believe that to be true. I think you should, if it's in your comfort level, if it's what you really like to do, if it's an effective way for you to communicate. So what I see, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but some of the people that are doing this are doing it because they've been told, well, you should. It's the next step to try to grow your business, to get your business started. And, they're always 15 to 25 or 30 minutes long usually. And they're usually always asking the exact same scripted questions that the last guy asked me. It's maybe 1 in 10 will be creative, unique, and have good thought out questions, but then be engaged with me, listen to my answers. So we're trying to take a different approach here. We're not going to be cramming a podcast into 15 to 20, maybe even 45 minutes. Our goal here is anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. We'll probably hit the sweet spot at about an hour and a half as we go, because we want to have in-depth, deep conversations, give people time to listen, post questions that we can then answer. But I think your explanation to me when we were kind of throwing this around was, let's do this as kind of a talk show or just an interview show about commercial real estate. So that's what we're aiming to do. Provide some education, maybe insights on markets, have a guest every once in a while. But I don't want to have a guest every 30 seconds, because then you run out of people, you start recycling them, then you get people that you really don't have any value being added by having them on. So anyway, that's my thought.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm excited about what we're going to be doing here, because it's actually a unique commercial real estate show. I mean, there's not really any talk shows like this where, you can kind of, I guess it's kind of like Cardone Zone, where you can call in and ask questions and stuff like that. But, we're going live on YouTube. You can come in and comment. If you guys are listening on the podcast later on, if you do enjoy YouTube, come look at mine and Bruce's ugly mugs and heckle us while we're live. We would love that. And to, Bruce and I create a lot of content. We're both authors. We both are working on courses. Bruce has actually launched his course, and that's all good and fun, but we don't get to interact unless we're actually in person with our audiences. And considering 2021 and all the craziness that this has created, we haven't gotten to do that. So for us, starting this live podcast was a great way of going about that. So I'm excited about the opportunity here. But Bruce, what do you think that we're going to be covering? What do you want to be talking about?
Well, I want to be talking, a lot of my part of this show is going to be about mindset. And, some people might go, oh, touchy-feely kumbaya bullshit. But, it's just, I think it's the underpinning of all success is your mindset. Do you have negative self-speak? Are you always doubting yourself? Are you listening to those around you that really want to tear you down because it makes their lack of success or drive or ambition be more palatable for them? So mine is going to be geared a lot toward that. Make sure people understand the proper way to be thinking. Get out of your own head, get out of your own way. Forward progress, even if it's 1% a day. Remember, 1% a day is still 365% in a year. So that's going to be my approach. But yeah, I mean, market conditions, maybe a big topic, on the next few episodes, and maybe this one a little, is COVID. Everybody's worried about COVID. How is that affecting property value? How is that affecting acquisition? How is that affecting disposition? How are you managing that? Because you and I have a property management company in Nashville, and my wife and I have a property management company here in Austin. So we are absolutely 100% front line on that. So we can shed some light on that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, I agree. It's been really interesting watching the headlines and seeing, what the news is saying about commercial real estate. Like, office is dead, but you and I are managing all of these office buildings. We're like, no, we're collecting 100% of our rents. Our office is doing just fine. So yeah, I think it's going to be fun to actually be a commercial real estate news source, from the front lines. So I'm pretty excited about that. But today we're going to be diving a little bit into your story. We figured for the first couple of episodes, it would make sense for you guys to get to know the host a little bit better. Again, we've had these other platforms, Instagram, YouTube, courses, books, but you don't really get to know us as people very personally. And so I figured it would be great for us to just kind of dive into who we are, what our backgrounds are, and how we came to be where we are now. So, Bruce, you've got one of the most interesting stories that I've ever heard out of commercial real estate investing. Start us off. Where are you from? What's your story?
So, my background, I grew up pretty damn poor. I was a military kid, military brat, and grew up in South Texas in Corpus Christi, a little beach town called Flower Bluff, which, it was a high school, right? It was what it was, but I did not do well in high school, so we'll get into that in a second. But, my parents divorced when I was, I think, 10 years old, fourth grade, somewhere in that area. My mom and dad both actually were high school dropouts. My dad went into the military to support us as the family. But then when they got divorced, and like I said, when I was about 10 years old, we're with my mom. We have to move off base now because they are no longer married. And she doesn't have any skill set at all. She's been a stay-at-home mom her whole life. She sold Avon and things like that. But she's never really had a true job to that point. So she has no education. She doesn't have a high school education, no GED. She has nothing. So she's got to figure something out. So she went to work at the base, the military base's grocery store called the Commissary. Well, what she did there, she bagged groceries for a living, right? She's in her mid-30s probably at this point. Yeah, about 34. And she's bagging groceries, but it's not like HEB for the people that live in Texas, or I assume most of the grocery chains across the country now. You get a minimum wage, and, it's not a lot, but at least you have a minimum wage. At the Commissary, and I think it was more common back then in grocery stores in general, there was no wage. She didn't get paid anything except tips. That's it. There was no waiter, waitress. You make $201 an hour, $301 an hour plus tips. It was tips. That was it. And so she did that. And on the weekends, she stocked cheese in the dairy department for $2 an hour. We lived in government housing, and we were paying $35 a month in rent. I'm sure that with me when I was in my 30s or 40s, just kind of reliving our story as a family. So we were busted ass poor. Didn't have much. We were the family that had to put box fans on our windows in South Texas in the summer to cool us down because we couldn't afford to turn the air conditioner on. In the mornings, when it was cold in the winter, we would all huddle around the stove. This is going to be tacky maybe, but we were somehow, I guess we were paying for water or something. I don't know why this was the way it was, but it was. We couldn't flush the toilet unless we did a number 2, except once a day. That was it. But it wasn't a bad upbringing. I had no idea I was even poor until we came home from grocery shopping one afternoon. It was a Saturday. Me, my mom, and my sister, we get home to our little apartment, and there's a box on the step. And I'm like, well, what the hell is that? I'm 12 or 13 by this time. And I go over, I open the box, and, well, there's a bunch of gifts in there. Like, well, who in the hell left us a bunch of presents? We don't have any family around here. Well, maybe the church. It was Toys for Tots. And that was the first time that I ever consciously realized that I was poor. And, being 12, maybe 13, but probably 12, you're coming into puberty. That's when boys are trying to figure out who they are. That's where some of the machismo starts to kick in because you have some more testosterone flowing through your body and trying to establish yourself. And then I get slapped in the face with toys for tots. None of my friends are in this situation. I'm consciously aware of that now because I start looking around and assessing everybody around me like, oh, I promise there's no other friend that I have that would have had this happen. So that was rough. I did not handle it well. And I felt terrible. I feel terrible to this day that I reacted very poorly. I started breaking stuff in the apartment that we could barely afford $35 a month for because I was mad. I wasn't mad at my mom. My mom was a great mom because, again, I didn't know we were poor. We lived in government housing. She stocked groceries and bag groceries and stock cheese. I had no idea because she was that good a mom. But anyway, so, that was my story. And then it became a kind of a scarlet letter for me. Now I'm aware of it. And I think everybody knows and everybody points at me. And probably nobody was pointing at me. But, so we have an hour and a half, right? So I want to keep going on this a little deeper just to tell you.
That's what we want to do, man. Let's dive into it.
Right. Just to share with you how amazing my mom was. All right. This is just cathartic for me and personal part of my story. But again, that was her background. That was her skill set. That was her job. And we were busted ass poor. Well, about 2 years later, she met a phenomenal man, Charlie, who became my stepfather. And, shortly after they got married, they decided to move out of the apartment. He moved her out of the apartment. They moved out of the apartment together. They bought a house. And as poor as we were, as no money as my mother made, she was still able to save the money needed for the down payment to buy the house. Wow. We paid 40 grand for the house back in 1980, probably one or two, whatever that was. But again, that's just a story of, don't cry for me. It's not, oh, boo-hoo, sad story for Bruce. Yeah, I was poor as shit, but I had a good life. I had a phenomenal mother. And then, got married into a phenomenal stepfather. My dad was very kind of absent in my life, but he wasn't a bad person. He was just chasing his own dreams. But anyway, so that's my childhood. And then, going into high school, I suck at formal education. I just suck in that environment. I barely got out of high school because I'm too antsy. I'm too inquisitive. I'm too hyper. In a room and learn about classic composers or English authors. I don't give a shit. I do now. I've actually come to appreciate that, but it didn't matter in my life back then. I was a kid. How am I ever going to apply calculus? Not that I ever got to calculus, but how am I ever going to apply calculus to my life? It's not going to, it's not kind of going to come into my life. So I barely squeaked out of high school. And so then I thought, well, it's 1986. What do? Right? It's the 80s. You have to go to college. That's the thing. Everybody knows you have to go to college. That was the dogma of the day. So I went to college because I was supposed to go to college. I didn't get any scholarships. I sucked at, all of it. So I barely got out of high school. So nobody wanted to give me any scholarships. I went to community college. I tried that for a year and a half to maybe 2 years, and that didn't work either, any better than high school did. I stayed on scholastic probation, I think it's called. I was, the opposite of the dean's list. And finally, I realized this isn't working for me either. So I chased a girl to Austin, Texas, my girlfriend. But I'm no longer with that girl. She's a great girl. But we grew apart, but I owe her my kind of escape from Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi is a great place. It's fine, but it wasn't for me. I had outgrown it. I grew up there. It was time to move on. So anyways, I end up in Austin, and I'm trying the college thing again. So I go to the local community college, Austin Community College, and I'm going for a finance degree, I think. And I answer an ad in the want ads, and before Monster and Indeed and all that, for a stockbroker, because that's what I ultimately thought I was going to do. So I thought, look, I'll never get the job, but I want to go in for the interview so I can get some practice for when I do get my degree. I still thought I was going to get a degree somehow, but so I went in knowing I'm not going to get the job, and then I got the job. Like, I'm a badass. Wow. And then I realized after I quit being a stockbroker, I wasn't a badass. What it was the Wolf of Wall Street, right? That's
Yeah.
what it was. It wasn't that debaucherous. It wasn't quite that bad, but 80% of the office was on coke. Everybody was screaming at their clients on the phone, just like you see in the Wolf of Wall Street. We weren't having sex in the office. It wasn't quite that bad, but it was that. We were pitching penny stocks.
I mean,
And I
speak for
realized,
yourself, Bruce. Maybe you're the only one.
well, so we were just, I was just a sales guy, right? I was a used car salesman, but I was just pitching probably worthless stock, but that's all I knew. So I was doing it until I realized I hate this. So I quit that because I couldn't make any money at it for after a while because we went to Desert Storm, we went to war. So I mean, I was decent at it. I was making a decent living, but we got to where I couldn't sell anything anymore for a while. So I fell out of that. I get no degree. I have a friend would say, I can rescue you. I've got a way out for him. Like, oh, I'm all ears. I need something. He pulled me into retail. Like, okay. So my first job after being a stockbroker, making, high 5 figures to low 6 figures as an early 20-year-old in the early 90s at that point. I'm working 20 hours a week, making $5 an hour at a bank drive-through. So that was a really big awakening for me. But then I fell into traditional retail, did that for almost 20 years, hit a wall there. I made good money. I was climbing the corporate ladder. At one point, my boss had told me on my annual review that every annual review period for the store managers, the district staff would always get together and talk about progression planning. Who's next in line to be promoted to district manager? And my name came up. So I was probably at one point going to be next in line for a district manager position. I was doing well, but then I hit a wall and I got to where I hated my life. I'm 5'8". I was 240 pounds because I worked 100 hours a week. A lot that last year of working for somebody else. I didn't have a family, couldn't date. I worked 100 hours a week. The only people I could date were the people I worked with. Well, I can't date the people I work with. That's totally inappropriate. So I didn't have pets, no kids. I was lonely. I'll admit that. And now I can look back and say that I didn't go to a doctor, but I know I was clinically depressed. I was fat. I hated everything about my life. I made good money. I was saving good money. I was investing wisely because even though it sucked as a stockbroker, I got trained on how to invest in the stock market. So I knew how to do it very well. And I did well. 2007 comes along. I go into my boss's office and said, look, I'm out. I got to move on. I can't do this anymore. It's killing me. He said, I'm so glad you came to me because I was about to come to you. I had gotten so apathetic and so jaded at my job because I hated it so much. My performance was slipping. It was negatively impacting my staff, my employees, my managers, everybody that worked for me. So, I packed up everything I owned and put it in storage and then got a rental car and drove around the eastern half of the U.S. for a month and a half. Went through Memphis, went to the Baseball Hall of Fame, the Football Hall of Fame, went up to Montreal, spent a day there, drove all the way down to Key West, hung out in D.C. for a little while with some friends. Then I finally made my way back to Texas. And then I thought, okay, I got to figure this out. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? And, I'm sitting in my front yard because at that point I had bought a house because, again, I made good money. I invested my money wisely. So I had a fair chunk of change to live on, paid cash for my house, lived in the suburbs out in Leander, Texas, and just worked in my yard for a year to decompress. And I called a buddy one day. I said, hey, dude, it's a beautiful day. Let's go play golf. He goes, dude, I don't know what you're asking me for. I got to go to work today. I'm like, oh, crap. What am I going to do? I have no family. I have no wife. I have no girlfriend. And now all my friends can't hang out and play with me now that I've got some liberty in my life. So I thought I got to figure something out. I started researching real estate because you keep hearing things about real estate. So I was very fortunate. I found a good coach. They taught me how to invest in apartment complexes, and they even taught me how to syndicate deals in apartment complexes. So that's all I've ever done in investing in real estate. I've syndicated every deal I've ever done, and I've only bought true multifamily, 5 units and above. My first deal was a 48-unit property, and since I've syndicated 1,100 plus deals, wrote a book on how to syndicate called Syndicating's a Bitch, an Amazon #1 bestseller. So I'm kind of proud of that, being a college dropout, But yeah, long-winded probably, but that's my story. That's how I've gotten to where I am. Now we are, again, we have two property management companies. We have an asset management company, a construction company, very vertically integrated. We won the Austin Apartment Association Rental Owners of the Year for 2016, the National Apartment Association Award for 2017, and then the Think Realty Award for Multifamily Investor of the Year for 2019. So I'm living proof that you can come from retail, busted as hell as a kid, broke as hell, with no education, no formal education, and I'm a pretty decent success now. So that's my story. Hopefully, a lot of people it'll resonate with, and it'll embolden you and empower you to think, well, crap, if that moron can do it, I can do it. Because that's really the way I see it. I'm no smarter than anybody, but I never give up, and I'm always, always, always learning. Even though it's not in a classroom, I'm always learning.
Man, I can't wait to unpack that because that's one of the. I mean, I've done several videos on how to buy commercial real estate with no money. And I get people asking me all the time, like, I mean, I have no money. I'm working, part time for somebody else. I really want to get into real estate. How do I get started? And I think you're right. I mean, I love that you want to talk about the mentality shift because there has to be a major mentality shift to go from being a retail manager and making that W 2 income to I'm betting it all on myself, right? I mean, that's a huge shift. So let's kind of dive into all that. I mean, Bruce, growing up, not knowing that you were poor and then realizing that, how do you think that that's affected who you are now today as a commercial real estate investor?
I get asked that all the time. So that was the impetus for, becoming rich and no, I had no interest in being rich. I knew I would be successful. I knew I would make something of myself. It was just an innate belief in myself. There was affirmations on my bathroom mirror, none of that stuff, but I just knew I would be okay and I was going to be successful. But that scarring, I guess, at 12 or 13 years old, it didn't drive me to become wealthy, to become a millionaire, a billionaire, none of that stuff. But what it did do for me is it maybe subconsciously more than anything, it made me realize I don't want this for myself. I love my mom. She did the best with what she had. She thrived in the environment she had been put into, but I didn't want to go through that myself as an adult. Someday I knew I would probably have a wife. I would probably have kids. And I didn't want my kids to come home to that. I wanted to be the ones that, flip it. And maybe it's hypocritical. I don't know. But I wanted to flip that script. I wanted to be the one that could afford to help others like Toys for Tots did. What they did for me as a 12-year-old was phenomenal. And I'm forever grateful that they cared enough to help other people that needed help. But that was rough for me. So I wanted to be the person that could give back instead of taking from. And that's what it was. I just didn't want my family to go through that. I didn't want to go through that again. But there were lots of trials, tribulations, stumbles on the way. I remember working retail. I was always determined to make a better life for myself than retail could provide. And again, retail did well for me or by me, but I always strived for something better. So I had started a commercial cleaning business while I worked full time in retail. And I was struggling. I say that. No, that's right. I actually stepped down to part-time in retail. So my only sure paycheck had been cut by more than half. I'm starting this commercial cleaning business. And at the beginning, it's very slow. And it got so rough for me that I was now broke, right? I had no income almost, not enough to survive on. So I literally, in my mid-30s, would go to bed at 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening if I wasn't at work, because I couldn't afford to feed myself. My rationale was if I'm asleep, I can't tell I'm hungry, right? So I would go to sleep. So yeah, that sucked, but I made it through all of that stuff, came out the other side. We've really applied ourselves at what we do. My wife and I'm the CEO of all of our companies. She's the CFO because she's a CPA. I'm very fortunate to have found a life partner that is equally bought into business like I am, and she has a different skill set than I do. So we're a perfect complement for each other. She is my rock. I hope I'm her rock. We lean on each other all the time. But yeah, that I think is what 12-year-old Bruce, that scarring did for me.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you were semi-retired basically. I mean, before you even got into real estate, so it wasn't like it was, I got to do this to make money for the rest of my life. I mean, that's the thing that I love about real estate. I mean, it can be, to me, it's like golf, right? Like you can do this till the day that you die. You can go as hard as you want into it, or you can just kind of dabble in it. I mean, it's fun either way. You can be the GP and go find deals and run them yourself, or you can be the LP and just invest in somebody else's projects. I mean, there's so
So
many
you got a
different
better
ways.
outlook on golf than I do because I hate golf. I played golf for a while, but I suck at it so bad. I'm very competitive with myself, and I'm
Uh,
very athletic. So when I don't do well in an athletic endeavor, I don't like it. So I throw clubs. No, I don't throw clubs. That's right, because I've never bought a set of clubs. I always play with clubs, house clubs, because I am not going to spend hundreds of or not thousands of dollars because I know I'm going to throw them. Right? I've thrown. Everybody's going to hate me for saying this, but I've thrown golf balls at deer because I just get so pissed. So I finally went, okay, this is not working for me. This is not healthy for me. So I'm glad it works for you, but I want no part of golf.
well, that's so funny. We need to talk about shifting your mentality on that then, right? I'm the same way. Like I'm super competitive, and when it comes to golf, I didn't want any of my friends beating me. I mean, I was the kid back when we would go bowling as a family that if I didn't beat everybody, I was like throwing a temper tantrum and ruined the whole night for everyone. So what the way I reframed it, the way that I look at golf now is like I'm drinking with my buddies. I just happen to be swinging this weird stick at a ball.
Yep.
That changed it for me because I was the same way, man. I used to get so mad.
Yeah, but my
It's
buddies
frustrating.
are pretty hardcore about it. They want to play when it's 110 degrees in Austin, Texas. They want to play when it's raining. I'm like,
Nope,
no,
no
I don't
thanks.
enjoy it enough to do that. So I'll
Yeah,
play if it's a nice balmy day and
oh,
there's no rain, and we're just going to drink on the golf course and then Uber home, of course. But yeah, I'll do that.
exactly. Yeah, I'll drink back at the clubhouse. I'll see you guys after 18.
Exactly.
Oh, that's awesome. So why multifamily? I mean, how is that when you started looking into real estate? How did you fall into multifamily of all the different asset classes and product types that you could have chosen?
Well, honestly, it's because that was what was in my face. That was what appeared to be available to me because you don't see a lot of people talking about true commercial, right? And I call true commercial industrial, warehouses, restaurants, office space, retail, that kind of thing. Usually, when you're hearing people, novices, talk about it or people sharing information, it's about buying single family houses and renting them out. So I just gravitated toward residential myself. And then I got very fortunate that I found a coach that understood that single family is great, but it's not going to really be life changing for you. It can provide a good lifestyle for you, but I wanted more than that. I'll just be honest about it. I am comfortable with who I am. I wanted a fabulous life, one where I could provide lots of jobs for other people, um, housing for lots of other people, be able to afford to travel whenever I want, go wherever I want, and stay as long as I want. And single family was not going to provide that for me. Commercial was, and again, I understood residential because I've lived in my own house, I've bought my own house, so I kind of understood residential to some degree. So that's really what drove me into multifamily, and I still love multifamily, but I'm learning the virtues. I have learned the virtues of commercial. What I'm calling true commercial. They're different. You got to understand what you're doing. You have to understand the differences in the way they're managed, the way they're structured as a deal, the way they are lent upon, the way debt works. It's slightly different. But I still invest heavily in multifamily, but we are starting to do more and more commercial now, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, by the way, while we have this platform, we are looking for a little over 200 multifamily units in the state of Tennessee for 2021. So if you have an apartment building that is over 200 units, probably slight value add, right, Bruce? I mean, let's bring
Yeah,
it to us because we're looking to buy.
right. Yeah, we'll take deep value add also. What I don't really want right now are totally vacant deals. And that sounds weird to most people listening. That vacant, totally vacant. Well, in commercial, we're buying a lot of stuff that's totally empty. people would think, well, that sounds dangerous. There's a reason it's empty. Well, it's either been given up on by somebody else, run into the ground by somebody else, taken over by the bank. There's some reason. We only buy totally vacant things that are in really good markets, transitioning areas that we have upside. Multifamily, it's really hard to find things that are totally empty, but we'll buy those too. But what I like about multifamily, that even the deeply distressed, deep value add properties, they're still usually going to be 70 to 80% occupied. So most of the time, you're going to buy and still be cash flow positive from day one. Now, some of the deep value adds, you're not going to make any money for maybe a year or two while you turn the ship around. But I like multifamily because it provides a lot of free cash flow, a lot of passive income and monthly income for us, because we live on income, right? We live on cash flow. Net worth is fantastic. Big bumps to net worth every 2 to 3 years when we buy these deep value add properties are fantastic. But I live on cash flow. So that's what multifamily really does for us, is it provides our base. And now we can go out and take these shots on these totally vacant properties.
Yeah, exactly. It's been interesting kind of talking with you about that, because we're almost looking at multifamily now as, here's our cash flow play, and let's go do commercial real estate for the the net worth play, because the opportunities, like we're buying an office building in Chattanooga right now, and we'll buy it for 1.8. We'll drop about 1.1 into it, a little over that, probably 1.2. But by the time that it's leased up, it's worth 6.5 million. Conservatively. And so you look at that, the cash flow is not going to be insane. It's not going to be as strong as a multifamily asset, but in terms of sale value, or at least to our balance sheets, that makes a massive difference. So
right. So let's now unpack that. Right. So now let me spin the table here a little bit. So people hear that, say, okay, you're all in for 3 million, right? 1.2 to 1.8 to purchase, 1.2 to rehab it and get it ready. You're in it for 3, and you're saying it's going to be worth 6 to 6.5. Oh, they just doubled their money. No, we aren't going to double our money, because we employ safe levels of productive debt. Get out of the Dave Ramsey mindset, for those of you listening that are in that mindset. I like Dave Ramsey, but he's for you if you are financially broken. If he is, if you are, he's phenomenal, and I love his program. If you are not financially broken, I need you to think bigger. I need you to think, not pay off your house as quickly as you can and call on the radio show and go, woohoo, that shit doesn't help, right? Because you still got to go to work tomorrow. What we do, we don't have to go punch a clock for anybody else anymore, right? So it's a totally different concept. But so let's go back to safe levels of debt. We'll just do some really quick back of the napkin. These aren't actual numbers, but they're really close. It's to express a concept. Well, you take it over, actually. This is the deal that you brought up. So talk about how using leverage, what the returns potentially are going to actually look like.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? So with leverage, which the only time I've ever bought a property in cash was because we were up against a deadline, we got a great deal on it, bought it in cash, and we're refinancing it and pulling money out. So putting debt on it. With these types of products, it's a completely vacant office building. We're expecting to get about a 20% down payment from the lender. We'll probably bring an additional 5, maybe 10% to the table just for closing costs, reserves, and interest carry. So on that $3 million deal, we're bringing $1 million in cash. So, when Bruce talks about, 3 million to 6 million, we're not doubling our money, right? Because we're using somebody else's money to buy the asset. So we're bringing $1 million cash, and then we'll be able to sell it for 6, which means our net would be around 3, probably more, but call it 3. We've tripled our money.
Exactly. That's the power of safe debt, right? That because of what you're doing here, it's not a doubling, which is 100% return. It's a tripling, which is a 300% return. That you do a few of those deals, that's life changing. And that's because of commercial real estate. And we're going to capitalize on somebody else's misfortune, sad for them, but we're going to turn this thing around and we're going to make a crap ton of money on it.
You don't have to censor yourself. It's totally fine. This is, I believe that there is a bunch of adults that will be watching this. So, well, Bruce, we got a little sidetracked there. I want to dive further into your multifamily journey. So 48 apartment units. If I'm starting off in real estate, and I'm looking at a single family home compared to a 48 unit apartment complex. How am I going to justify, like, how do I eat that elephant? Like, how do I take that down?
Well, I mean, if you're worth billions, well, most of us aren't. Most of us, maybe have 100,000 saved up, maybe 200, 300, something like that. So, what I did it as a syndication. And all a syndication is, there's a group of us that pool our money together and we go out and buy something. In this case, it was an income producing asset or an apartment complex. So, you'll hear it, and you subscribe to this, and I have no problem with it. But at the same time, I firmly believe it's difficult to get started with no money. It can be done, no question. You've done it, I think, but it's really hard, and it's not as easy, really, because then you got to find other people that entrust you with a project, especially starting out with no experience, for no money in the deal yourself. Well, I'll be the operating partner, yeah, but you have no skin in the game. It's a wall, right? So I think most of the time you're going to need some money to get started. I put $115,000 into my first deal. I had to raise $575,000, of which I put in 115. So then I had to go out and find $460,000. So I rounded it up from 14 other investors. We all put our money together, went out and bought this asset. So what was really interesting, and this is commercial real estate in action, right? I bought that. It was $1.6 million. I got almost a $1.2 million loan to take it down. I have no job, right? I'm gainfully unemployed. I don't have a W-2. I have no experience, no track record, and I still got lending. Try to go buy a single family home to live in or to invest in. Doesn't matter. That's not going to happen. They're not going to lend to me because I have no income. I have no W-2. I can do that commercial, because commercial, the approval of the loan is based probably 60 to 80% on the asset itself. Well, do we think it will generate enough profit to satisfy the debt payments for Bruce? If we do, well, then that's the first hurdle. Now, 20%, 30% of the decision-making process is based upon Bruce himself. If I'm a convicted puppy rapist, I'm probably not going to get that. Sorry, I have weird ways of making points. But if I've got a checkered background, if I filed bankruptcy, if I've had foreclosures in my past, okay, they probably still aren't going to give me the deal. But I didn't have any of that. I had a clean background, a good bio or resume. In retail, yes, but I had been in charge of people, in charge of buildings, in charge of P&Ls. So they felt comfortable with me. Again, you can't do that in single family. So that's why. That's another one of the reasons that I started in multifamily, but that's how I did it. I brought 14 other people to the table. We all went out and did it together, owned it for a little over, almost 2.5 years, and made 300% for my investors on that project.
Yeah. Nate says save
Sorry,
puppies. I mean, yeah, that's an interesting example, but I think the point is made, right? I mean, it's funny, back in February, thank God this did not go through. But back in February, I was considering buying my first single family home because I was going to Airbnb it. So, we'll go on a whole nother tangent on another episode about why we're basically anti single family home. I think that's going to be a very controversial topic. But yeah. I bought 4 office buildings that year, 4, and had no issues getting approved for them. Could not qualify to buy a $600,000 home. Could not do it. And that's what's so interesting. I mean, I guess it makes sense that some of those, I guess catch-alls are in place for residential, considering what happened in 2008. But it's crazy to me that I can qualify to buy $6 million worth of buildings, but I can't buy a $600,000 house. So I think you're right. I mean, the scalability almost lends itself to being easier. It's easier to do it, really. How did you go about raising that money? I mean, did you just know a bunch of people that had a whole bunch of money? I mean, what was that process like?
Not at all. I was coming out of the retail world, and there's not a lot of money floating around retail, right? The employees are good employees, are good people, but retail people, for the most part, I was one, so please don't hate me for saying this kind of stuff, but it's just a fact. Most of them don't have very high financial IQ. So they don't save their money well. They don't invest their money well. So I
I
was,
think most people, I think most people in general don't have high financial IQ.
I agree with that completely. But so my peer group was not very wealthy. They didn't have a lot of disposable, investable cash. So I started going around to some of the local real estate meetups, some of the RIAs, and just networking with people, talking with people. And I started my own meetup. But before I really even knew what meetup was, this was 2011. And I was going to these different things and meeting people. And there was another guy that started trying to learn the industry himself at the same time I was. And I talked to him and said, "Hey, why don't we get together every week, every Wednesday at a Starbucks local to us and just share the things that we've each learned the previous week?" Because we were trying to learn it at the same time. We were sometimes going to different meetups, different conferences. So we came together every Wednesday and just shared information. So then we would go to all these other conferences and meetups again, and we would just start talking to people. "Oh, hey, and if you're interested, me and VJ are meeting every Wednesday at Starbucks. We'd love to have you." We just sit around and shoot the shit about real estate. That's it. We're trying to learn it together, and we're sharing information that each of us have learned along the way. So we started pulling people together like that. And about 5 years later, that mailing list had grown to about 400 or 500 people. Right now, any one meeting, we would get maybe 30 to 50 people together. So it wasn't the full 400 or 500 people, but it just grew organically. And the first deal that I did, almost every single investor came out of that group because they got to know me personally. We spent probably 6 to 9 months together before I closed on my first deal. That gave them lots of opportunity to get to know me, to sit with me. We started, we would go have a drink together. We would barbecue. We would boat together. So we started hanging out. We got to know each other very well. They got to know, like, and trust me enough to give me investing dollars, right? They saw that I had the most money in the deal, which was hugely important for me. I had one guy come in at 100, so I thought, "Oh, guys, I'm going to bump my investment to 115 because I want to be the biggest person at the table to show you that I am all the way bought in. I have more money on the line than any of you do." So that's how it really worked. I kind of sort of fell into running my own meetup group, and most of my investors came out of that.
That's brilliant. Now that I think about it, I mean, the first capital raise that I ever went through was because I'm a board member for the Real Estate Investors of Nashville, and all of my investors came from that group. Because I mean, you're right. Like, we were sitting around having those conversations and talking about it, and it wasn't like I was trying to constantly raise capital from them. I mean, I never did, actually, at all. Never mentioned one time about, like, "Hey, come invest with me," until I was going through something like that. I was like, "Hey, I just want y'all's opinion on this. What do y'all think about it?" Because, at that point, everybody's got different perspectives, and they'd been hearing what everybody else was going on, and so it was interesting to talk about that. And then five guys from that table were like, "Yeah, we'll invest in this deal."
Yeah, I love that it was just organic, and you didn't go into it with the mindset of, "I'm going to go and do this and go here and be involved to raise money." It just happened organically. But in future episodes, we are going to dive deeply into the art of raising money, because now that you and I kind of started organically, we've kind of figured it out. We know how to raise money effectively, legally, and ethically, right? The right way. So we'll go into that in depth in the future.
Yeah, I think that would be a very popular episode, raising capital. I mean, that's one of the, that always seems to be the piece that people don't get. Like, I know how to underwrite. I know how to find deals. I know why this is a good deal. I know this and that. I've got the banking connections. I've got the contractor connections. But raising capital always seems to be kind of the missing piece. So I'm very excited to dive further into that one with you. How did you structure that first deal? I mean, what did you put in front of these investors? I mean, obviously it's organic. You've got a great relationship with them. But just because you have a good relationship doesn't mean they're going to give you a lot of money, right? So how did you structure that to make it attractive for them as investors?
So what I decided to do is I came up with an idea. So I'm the syndicator, the deal sponsor, the lead operating partner in this deal. The rest of them are silent. Now, I did have two guys sign on my loan for me because, again, I had no job. The bank did want to see somebody with a job somewhere. But that's everybody that came into the deal. And I did what a lot of people aren't willing to do. right? If you ever listen to Bigger Pockets and listen to Brandon Turner talk all the time, he says this all the time. Your first deal is your training wheels deal. It's not going to make you rich. It's not going to provide for you and your family to cover all your bills and expenses. You just have to run a good deal that doesn't lose money, that performs the way you thought it would for your investors. That's what the first deal is for, right? So on my first deal, I didn't take any premium. There was no promote. I didn't get an override. There was no GP split. There was no 70-30, 80-20, 85-15, 90. There was nothing. I made money only when we all made money together. Most people aren't willing to do that, right? They want to grow their thing immediately. I want that first deal to put a lot. Don't do that. People are on all the different Facebook groups and on all the different forums, and they're talking about their first deal. Yeah, should I do 70-30, 80-20, but I can't raise money? Well, then maybe just eliminate it. Well, I got to be compensated. Your compensation on that first deal is knowledge. That's it. You got to learn how to be good. How are you so arrogant to think, with no track record, no experience, don't really know what I'm doing because I've never done it. I've read books, I've gone to class, but you don't really know how to do it because you've never done it. But you have the audacity to think you deserve a 30% promote or a 20% promote. Now, if you can sell that to your investors, totally fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying, to get your first deal done, maybe do what I did. I didn't charge or promote at all. So I had no extra any extra compensation coming from it. Now, I did get an asset management fee. To be fair, there was something there for me, but that was it. I owned 20% of the deal, and I got an asset management fee, and that's all.
I didn't realize that. So you invested $115,000, and that was your equity in that deal? Like,
That's it.
Straight, no split, no promote, nothing.
Not a thing. No waterfall, no preferred return. I didn't even know what the hell a preferred return was back then, but I knew how to factor a cash on cash return and didn't understand IRR. But again, I was upfront about all of that, my lack of experience with my investors. And, at the beginning of the deal, I'll be honest, it wasn't going well because lots of things were happening that I had never experienced that I had to figure out how to work myself through. I lean heavily on my coach. That's why, guys, you need a freaking coach. I don't want to be your coach. Don't take it wrong. I'm not pitching. I don't want to be your coach. I don't have time to be your coach. I loved being a coach when I did it. It's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. I just don't have the bandwidth, so I'm not asking. But you need a coach. If I didn't have a coach, I don't know how I would have made it through that first deal. But so the first 6 months to 12 months, I was underperforming, and I was not sleeping well at night. And I'll be honest about this. I would cry because, and I'm going to do it now if I'm not careful, I'm very emotional. So if you guys watch many episodes of this, you're going to see I'll probably shed a tear every now and then. But, it was tearing me up that I was underperforming. But at one of our meetings, I talked to my investors. I said, look, guys, I'm so sorry this is going on. We were still profitable. We're still making good money. We weren't hitting the numbers that I projected. I projected, I think, 12%. Now, this is a different era. Remember, there are 12% stabilized deals nowadays. It just doesn't exist. But back then it did, right? So I projected 12%, and I was hitting about 8 or 10, somewhere in that area. So it was still a solid deal, but I was tearing myself up because I wasn't hitting my projections. So I bore my soul in front of my investors, and they said, look, calm down, dude. It's okay. We knew when we got involved with you, you had no experience. We were willing to get in with you because we trusted you. You would do everything possible to fix it or make it right. And you have. You've gotten things turned around. So, that's the thing. I don't know how the hell I got on this tangent, but it's just talking about that first deal and how it went. Oh, that's right. No promote, the struggles, but you just got to keep pushing through it, trying to make yourself better all the time. And don't look to bleed every dollar out of a deal because you need it, because you deserve it, because you're owed it. Do what's right for your investors. Long term, it will pay off. I promise.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at it. I mean, let's be honest. The promote is there because of the value that you bring to the table and what you are going to create for everybody else. So It's okay for you to recognize that, hey, this is my first deal. Compared to a guy that's done 100 of these, I don't bring as much value. I'll do a 95-5 split or 97.5, 2.5. I mean, anything that you get at that point is gravy on top of the fact that you've got your first deal. I mean, that first deal is what changes everything. I was in the industry for what, 5 years before I bought my first office building, and as soon as I bought it, I was like, wow, that was actually way easier than I thought, and I bought three more that year. But it took me 5 years to get to four, and then after that, I mean, we were snowballing it. But I would never have done it had I not just bought that first one.
Yeah, and that's an important thing to talk about also. It's part of the mindset thing. So many people, this industry, commercial real estate, but really, I see it more in multifamily than anywhere else, that you get a lot of engineers that come into this because they understand spreadsheets, they understand how to calculate returns, they understand all the math of it. Guys, there's so much more to it than math. I'm telling you, it doesn't work without the math. No question. But I firmly believe the math is maybe 25 to 50% at most. The rest of it is just being a good entrepreneur because you're owning businesses. So an engineer brain, very often they get themselves locked up. As an engineer, you're trained to have a contingency plan for everything because people's lives may be on the line if you're building a bridge, right? Okay, I get it, but there's no way to do that in multifamily and commercial real estate. It's impossible when you get into business to contingency everything. And if they can't figure out a contingency plan for all the different things they imagine can go wrong in their brain, well, then they can't get comfortable enough to move forward. You got to get past that. You have to educate yourself, surround yourself with the best people you can to lean on when the time comes. I told you, I didn't know what a preferred return was. I didn't know what IRR meant. There was a lot of stuff I did, but I had conviction in myself. I knew I'd been successful at everything I'd ever done. And this was just the next thing I had to learn. But again, that's why it was important for me to have a coach. But I just got out there knowing that things are going to go wrong probably. And I will just figure it out and work through it and move through it and come out the other side fine. And that's exactly what happened. So you just got to take a chance on you, like you said, Tyler.
Yeah, I mean, the only difference between a failed real estate investor and a successful real estate investor is that the successful real estate investor figured out the problem. Because there will always be problems that pop up. Always. You cannot hedge against problems not happening. Like, there will be things that pop up that you have no idea how to fix. But the guys that figure it out, those are the ones that succeed.
Right. So again, talk about contingency planning, right? You tell me any one person that was equipped and prepared for COVID to happen back in 2018. Now you could say maybe in 2020 in January they were prepared because we saw it coming, but in 2018, 2015, even people that had done 10,000 units in multifamily or 100 deals in commercial, nobody was ready for that. Again, it's more to the same point. We figure out, as long as you're not somebody that's going to hide, you're going to be an ostrich and stick your head in the sand. Oh, it'll go away. It's not going to go away. You got to face it. You got to figure it out. You got to move through it. If you can't do that, it's totally okay. But I'm telling you now, you should not be a deal sponsor. You should not syndicate your own deals. Find a good sponsor or syndicator and invest in their deals. You'll get a lot of the benefit of commercial real estate. You'll get some exponential growth in your portfolio, most likely. But it suits your personality better. So you got to know who you are, and just work at it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It takes a very specific personality or a few personalities to actually pull together a solid sponsor or a GP, right? I mean, you can have a balance of different personalities within a GP, but if you're looking to be a solo GP or a solo sponsor, there are very few personalities and personality types that can actually pull that off, because it's not easy. I mean, you've got a lot of money, other people's life savings on the line. So it's not like it's just let's go get rich, with other people's money kind of thing. I mean, you are working for it.
Oh yeah, you are. And if people, you have to ask yourself, am I an entrepreneur by nature? If not, then maybe don't do this. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Just go find something that does light you up, that you are good at, that is, your skill set is suited to. Because again, this is being an entrepreneur. You own a business now. People fall into the mindset that, oh, real estate is different. It's a panacea. It's a rainbow. It's a unicorn. Oh, no, it's not. It's like everything else. It is a business. And if you don't have the stomach to be an entrepreneur and start your own restaurant, then you might not be cut out for this. Now, you could be cut out for this. Maybe restaurants just aren't your thing, right? Don't take me literal, but it's just the thought process.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's true. I mean, you can, and the cool thing about syndication is you can syndicate anything. I mean, Bruce loves talking about syndicating Snickers bars. It's not the most profitable thing in the world, but
Not profitable at all. It all goes in my gut, and I got nothing to show to all, any of my investors. But yeah, that's the thing. A syndication is just pulling your money together to go do something. That's it.
Yeah.
You can do it to buy a Snickers bar. None of us can afford it, but if we all put our money together, all 10 of us, we all put in a dime, maybe we can get a king size Snickers bar. Well, that was a syndication. So now you cut it into 10 equal parts and everybody gets a little bite. That's a syndication. That's all it is.
yeah, that's awesome. Caleb says he loves the yerba mate. Have you ever had mate before, like traditional yerba mate?
It's not good.
Oh my gosh! Oh, I love it. That like
Oh,
bitter
I hate it.
root. Oh man,
Oh.
I went to Argentina back when I was in high school because I studied Spanish and my high school had this language grant program, and so they sent me to Argentina for a month one summer to live with the family and study Spanish to kind of bring that back. But everyone there drinks yerba mate, and I got addicted to it. It was so good. I've never had anything
Well,
like that before.
my daughter got me on this. I was drinking way too many Monsters and Rock Stars and all that stuff and just pickling and destroying my insides. I'm certain of it. But she came home with this one day. She's probably 18, 19 years old. I was like, what is that? And I looked at it and she kind of told me what it was. I looked at it. On the back of it, it says it has 150 milligrams of caffeine. I was like, oh, then maybe this would be a good substitute if it's healthier. So really the only thing in here, it's all organic purified water. We're on a really bad tangent right now.
Yeah,
but
I was just
it's
thinking
got,
that. But
that's it. And sugar's not good for you, but that's really it. It's better than all the unpronounceable bullshit that goes into a Monster. I still love Monsters, and I could get hooked on them again really easily. But to me, still not perfect, but it's a much healthier alternative for my coffee and caffeine fix.
yeah, I'm gonna have to try one of those.
Oh, they're so
Um,
good.
so what's next for Bruce Petersen? I mean, you've gotten to a point where you syndicated to over 1,100 units. Um, I would imagine that that's brought you and your family a significant amount of wealth and comfort. Where do you see yourself going next?
That's a big question because, oh my Lord. See, when you're in retail and you got your nose down, you can't look up for 2 seconds because somebody's going to hit you in the head, knock you back down, or you just don't have time to look up. You don't have time to think about other things. But now, as an entrepreneur, a job creator, my brain is on fire all the time. That's how we ended up starting a construction company. I was tired of being taken advantage of by GCs or lied to. One GC told me to my face, I lied to you. So I was like, you know what? This is bullshit. I can't deal with this. We're starting our own construction company. How do you do it? I don't know, but we're going to figure it out,
Yeah.
So, but because I have freedom now to think and, what's the next step? So some of my big things, right? I want to own a triple A or a double A baseball team someday, right? But then more kind of germane to this topic, I'm working on a lot of deals in Nashville right now. We're onboarding our latest client as a third-party management company, so that keeps us busy. I'm going to, open this up a little bit because we're under contract, so there's no fear here, right? You talked about
Sure.
the deal in Chattanooga. Well, we're also partners in a deal to develop 1.5 million, yes, I said million square feet of mixed use project over 32 acres in the Tennessee area. So that's going on. We just haven't really started marketing our education. I'm teaching people exactly how to do a syndication. So that's in the works. This is weird. I had somebody ask me to do he wanted to help me develop a reality show about me. I'm like, nobody gives two shits about me. Tarek and Christina, they're pretty. I'm not pretty, and who wants to follow a syndicator around all day? There's no excitement here. I was like, dude, I'm eternally flattered, but, no, thank you. But, we're always working on stuff. There's other business ideas that we have kicking around. We now provide back office services for other companies that know how to start they have a great idea and they're good, at that idea, but they don't know how to run a company. So now we are a company that can come into somebody else's company and provide their back office for a piece of the equity without question. I'm going to be honest about that. But that's things where we invest in other companies to provide their back office support. They don't have to worry about back office. They're probably really good salespeople or really good at some other piece. It's not their skill set to run the back office, to do the bill pay, to do all the invoicing, to do all that stuff, to work with the vendors and the contractors. Well, that's what our strength is. So we've got a lot of that going on. So we've just got irons in the fire everywhere.
That's interesting. I didn't realize you were doing that. I mean, that immediately reminded me of the E-Myth Revisited, which is a phenomenal book. If you haven't read the E-Myth Revisited, highly recommend it, especially if you're going to be syndicating, because basically every syndication you do is a startup business.
Yep.
But that's interesting because it allows you to in the E-Myth they talk about having entrepreneurial seizures, like mechanics. Yeah, there you go. Look at that.
Yep.
That's the book right there. But they talk about technicians having entrepreneurial seizures. Somebody who is incredible at cutting hair then wants to go start their own hair cutting business, but there's so much of the stuff that they've never had to do that they probably just don't have the skill set for. And so you have to either hire around you or, Bruce, that's a brilliant solution for, these people that may not necessarily have the capital to hire somebody starting out.
Exactly. You give us a piece of the equity. If we have to believe in the business, we have to believe in the entrepreneur, because not everybody's a good fit for us, right? We're not a good fit for everybody. Some people are offended by the fact that I cuss. That's fine. That's who I am, but I get it. I'm not for everybody.
This show is not going to be for you if you get offended by that.
So if somebody wants to bring us into their business, either buy our way in, because there's value to the company, or just give us a piece of the equity. If we don't have faith in that entrepreneur or we don't think they're of good character, we won't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Gerald, sending in love from the UK. Appreciate the shout out, Gerald. Hope you're doing well. Bruce, so it seems to me, in the last year you've written a book. You've got a course that's recently come out. You're working on building an educational platform. Do you see yourself focusing on that quite a bit over the next 10 years? I know you said you're not really interested in one-on-one coaching, but you're kind of building this educational platform that you wish you had starting out. Honestly, I'll say I wish I had that kind of stuff starting out. That didn't exist 7 years ago.
Well, so my actual passion in life is teaching. That's it. There are a lot of cynical, jaded people out there. Oh, well, what is this? If you were really as good as you say you were, you would go out there and do it, not teach other people how to do it. You're a scam. Kiss my ass. I hate that kind of person. I'll just be honest, right? I'm very polarizing too, right? I'm very opinionated. I hate that mentality. That's a broke ass, negative, cynical person that good luck having a successful life, my friend. I teach because I love to teach. Me teaching you how to make $1 million a year as well does not take away from my ability to make $1 million a year. I'm very good at what I do. I'm very successful. We have a very good life. We make good money. We have a decent amount of money, but I now have the freedom and time to give back. I give back for free all the time. I had a national group come in to Austin probably 2 or 3 months ago and said, hey, we would love it. We have, about 50 to 100 of our members coming to Austin to learn about real estate. Would you be willing to come in and teach a class? I'm like, well, of course I would. And then I realized, no, they wanted me to teach the whole damn day, which that was fine too. So I probably took about 60 to 80% of the time on stage. But then they said, okay, so how much is that going to be? How much do you charge for this? I'm like, I'm not going to charge you anything. You give me value and you're allowing me to spread the word to people that maybe I can help and make a difference for. So I'm not always looking to monetize, but yeah, some of it I do need to monetize, right? Because there's a lot of work that goes into creating all this education. There's a ton of money that goes into it. 6 figures have gone into the full build out of all this stuff. So I will monetize it. But again, that's why I'm doing it. I'm trying to help other people. I will charge you for it, of course. But again, I want to give people a roadmap, to get to where they're trying to get to, and see that, again, a college dropout from high school dropout parents that grew up poor and came out of retail, dude, if I could do it, I promise I can show you how to do it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I mean, those courses are worth, thousands of dollars. And that's what I love about the fact that we're doing this show is, this is going to be basically a free version of that. Like, if you hang around, you listen to enough of these episodes, you join us live and you ask your questions. I mean, Bruce and I will be here to answer anything that you want. I mean, we're both super into giving back and teaching others and it's so much fun. I feel like we're probably both into that because again, when we first got started, none of that existed. I mean, and I know it's probably a little bit different in multifamily, but in commercial, no one wants to help you unless there is some financial gain for them. It's kind of a cutthroat industry. Can be.
Right. So I had a phone call with a guy one day about a year ago, and he was just picking my brain. And, I've got a Calendly set up that if you want to talk with me, just go to my Calendly. I'll have a call with you. I don't need, a lot of people are like, oh, I'll only talk to you if you're thinking about investing. No, if you just want to shoot the shit about real estate or I'm trying to get started, Bruce, I don't know what I'm doing. I'll give you a half hour. I don't care. So this guy,
is that link on your website? Is that app-guide.com?
I don't know that's a good question, really, because I need to make that more prevalent. But no, it's just calendly.com/apt-guy. Just go there. You can sign up for a 30-minute call. I don't care if you want to invest with me. If you don't want to invest with me, if you want my education, if you don't want my education, I'll take a half hour with you. I don't mind. I love talking about this. But so this guy booked some time with me and we're talking. We get about 25 minutes in and he's asked me all kinds of questions. He's like, man, Bruce, man, thank you so much. But I have one final question for you. Okay. Why are you doing this? Why are you giving me all this free advice that takes it from me? Why? I said, all right, look, and I gave him the same pitch that I just talked about earlier. Me helping you become more successful and living the life that I currently live does not affect my life. It doesn't take from my life. This is not a zero-sum game. You don't have to lose for me to win. Just quit thinking that shit. If you do, it's so wrong. It's a scarcity mentality, and it doesn't go well usually. I have a very abundant mind. So I told him that, look, again, it's not going to take from what I have to give to you. And I said, but the real answer, sir, is it's very selfish, right? If I teach others to do what I do and to have the life I have, selfishly, I have more cool kids to play with. Right now, if you're like I was, working 40 hours a week, 60 to 100 hours a week sometimes, you don't have time to enjoy a life, to have a life. So if I can teach other people to have the same kind of flexibility, become a job creator, that, it buys you free time. And now, again, selfishly, I have cool kids to hang out with. I'll just be honest with you. I want to be able to, I told you that buddy of mine, I said, let's go play golf today. I got to go to work. If I could teach that guy how to make, sufficient amounts of money to be able to walk away from that job and control his own calendar now, he could have played golf with me. So that is kind of a real benefit for me. It feels good to help other people. But selfishly, I have more cool people to hang out with.
Yeah. I mean, high tides raise all ships, right? I mean, it's so much fun having a friend group where, I've got a few guys here in Nashville that I can text them and be like, hey, you guys want to fly to Mexico this weekend? And we can go do that. And it's fun to be able to do stuff like that. Because we all send each other business. We all try to make sure that each other is as successful as possible. We're all a shoulder for everybody to lean on. Everybody owns their own company. And man, when you're running your own business, it can get lonely. It is a very different, it's same with being a sponsor, right? Because again, every syndicate is its own business. And so it's great to have a support group like that where everybody cares about the well-being of each other.
Yep.
So, Bruce, what's the biggest difference that you're seeing now between multifamily and commercial? Now that, you're kind of going through this transition with me into commercial. When I started learning multifamily from you, I was like, man, this is very, very different. The lending's completely different. The way that underwriting's completely different. What are you seeing coming from the other side?
Well, so first of all, let's just talk about the investment side of it. That honestly, Multifamily is probably the safest commercial niche to be in. It's the most rational. It's the thing that's the last thing people are going to quit doing. Other than maybe eating or breathing, they're going to the last thing they'll give up is paying their rent, right? Because if you quit paying your rent, you live under a bridge. So it's that. So it's probably the most rational, the safest, the most recession proof, in my opinion. But with that, there's that risk reward calculus, right? The riskier something is implied to be, the higher the expected return needs to be, right? Since multifamily has the lowest expected risk for the most part, your returns are usually going to be lower. So your returns are different. And true commercial, I need a deal to make 12 to 15% cash on cash once it's stabilized, right? For it to make sense for me. Because if it's going to return 6% to 8% like I get in multifamily, well, then I'm just going to go into multifamily because it's safer, right? People that have a retail shop, people that have a restaurant, people might quit going to the restaurant if they can't afford to go out to eat anymore. People might not want to buy the newest widget gadget if they can't, if their pay gets cut or if they lose their job. So in a bad economy, sometimes retail can be riskier, and same thing with restaurants and office space. But again, multifamily, they still got to live somewhere. So I love multifamily again for the cash flow base of our life. But then commercial, if you do it right, it doesn't have to be that risky. Now it is inherently more risky, but if you do it right, it's not that much more risky, and you're going to get higher returns. Now, one big difference: multifamily, even on a stabilized asset, I can buy it and still drive value creation in that asset by pulling different levers, by running it more efficiently, by introducing extra income streams, by renegotiating contracts with vendors and service providers. In in commercial, what I'm learning is if you buy a stabilized asset, something that's already, say, 85 to 95% full of tenants, they're all paying, there's not as much upside there because usually you have tenants locked in for 5, 10, or 20 years, and they'll have escalations built into their lease of maybe, it'll go up there 2% every year, 3% every year over that 5, 10, 20-year period. So you're continually getting more profitable, but you can't have big profitability jumps like I can in multifamily. Commercial is tremendously easier to manage. Oh my God, it's tremendously easier to manage. Multifamily, if I have a 200-unit property, I have 200 units that I have to manage. Even if they're vacant, I still got to worry about keeping the electricity on, make sure it got cleaned up after the last person moved out. I got to market it to the next person that'll hopefully move in. Commercial, once it's pretty full, there's really, depending on how you structure it, especially if you get into triple net, there's not much to do. You're there if the thing catches on fire, if there's a tornado, like if something major happens, you're there to help them through it and to guide them through it. But it's a different management process too, for sure.
Yeah, you're definitely not having to handhold people, right? And it's a place of business, not where they call home.
Exactly.
And so you think about the types of emergencies that you'll have. If a toilet breaks at a business, like, oh man, well, we'll put up a, out of order sign on the bathroom and we'll go next door. The toilet goes out at somebody's house. It's an emergency. They will not be happy about that.
Right.
Travis has a good question. Bruce, what is the best way to find a mentor in commercial real estate?
So the best way really is it's just the organic thing. Now, what you could do, just go onto Facebook, some of the Facebook groups, and ask people who they've used. Now, I say that, but let me back up a little bit now that I said it. One of my big pet peeves is doing that kind of thing on a public forum. People do that on Bigger Pockets all the time. They'll do it on Facebook groups all the time. So let me back up. I'm going to change my answer. I think you're being very unfair. And it's just, to me, it's a faux pas to do that in a public forum, because no matter how good a person may be at their craft, there's going to be somebody pissed off at them. I could have the best restaurant in town. My ingredients cost $100 to put that plate of food on the table, but I charge you $5, right? There's still going to be somebody that wasn't happy. You can't make everybody happy all day, every day. So even though a coach may be a phenomenal coach and a perfect fit for you, maybe somebody was their client once upon a time and they just would not do what the coach told them to do. Or they were scared to implement what the coach told them to do. They said, no, what you're telling me to do is stupid. It's not going to work. Why did you hire the coach in the first place? But you're going to have personality clashes. You're going to have people that wouldn't engage and do what they're supposed to do that the coach was telling them. So now they're just going to badmouth them. Well, that's not fair because they did what they were supposed to do. The client didn't follow through. So when you go on public forums, you open up to having negative people that it was their fault it didn't work, right? So then now I've told you don't do that. So okay, how do you do it? It's just organic. Go to meetups, talk to people offline. You can meet people on Bigger Pockets. You can meet people on the Facebook groups, but please direct message people and find out who they have worked with. Well, was it a good process? Was it a good experience? Go about it that way. The way I found mine, honestly, I did a Google search and I got very lucky that the second result that I clicked on felt like a person that I really believed in what they were talking about, what they were selling, what they were proposing. So I sat down and talked with them and we clicked. I did pay them, right? I probably paid them, this is a long time ago, maybe 10,000, something like that. I think a lot of coaches now are going to charge you 20 to 30 because they're going to provide you a lot of value and it takes a lot of time. But again, I just did a Google search, but I think the true best way is to it's like raising money. You have to get yourself into the system. You have to plug in. And if you'll plug in and just start asking people, hey, have you used a coach? Yes, I have. Who'd you use? I used Fred. Was Fred good? No, Fred sucked. Well, they probably maybe use Fred, but if 14 other people say, oh yeah, I used Fred, they were great. Maybe Fred's better than the first person told you. So go talk to Fred, right? So it's not a silver bullet answer, but I think that's the way you go about it.
I've got a pretty good story here too that we actually have never talked about before. But I mean, Bruce and I have not known each other forever. Yeah. Bruce started off as a mentor for me, which is funny. I mean, look at us now. We're investing in deals together. I mean, it's like kind of the ideal mentor mentee scenario. Now we own a company together. Now we're buying deals together. I met Bruce down in Austin at a mastermind meetup. I mean, most of the guys there were in real estate, but there were some tech companies and there was Brandon Turner was there, and Bruce was kind of like he hadn't joined yet, but he was one of the guest speakers. He was there to talk about how he had syndicated a bunch of properties, and there were only 30 other people there, so. I just went up and started talking to him, and this was like 2 or 3 days that we were at this meetup. And so just every day I would kind of be intentional about going and finding Bruce and sparking up a conversation with him, because he and I obviously we're starting a talk show. Like, he and I can talk about anything forever. We just kind of have those personalities. And I don't remember exactly how everything happened after I left Austin, but we stayed in touch. And we kept talking and we kept trying to figure out, how do I buy an apartment complex in Nashville? Do I start with 50 units? Bruce, would you help me syndicate 50 units? I don't know what I'm doing, but I knew that I wanted to do a syndication, and I knew that Bruce had done it before. And so I was like, look, I'll figure out how to raise the money. I will figure out how I will run the day-to-day of the deal. I just need you to come in and help me. And so that kind of sparked it off. And then I started a property management company. And Bruce had a property management company. And so a few months into that, I was like, well, Bruce, why don't you come in and join us? And so he bought into the company, and, it was just kind of step by step. It organically happened. I mean, neither of us really tried to force that by any means. And look at where we are now. I think, going to those meetups and finding somebody that you click with is one of the best ways you could possibly do it. I tell people all the time, offer to buy that person lunch, buy them dinner, buy them coffee. The worst thing you could ever do, and this is honestly insulting, is ask somebody out to coffee because you want to pick their brain, and then you don't pay for the coffee. Pay for the damn coffee, pay for the damn lunch. Come on, buy the drinks. Like, these people make $250 plus per hour, $500 an hour, and they're giving you some of their time. So, it's just a little thing. I don't know, that's a pet peeve. But anyway, find somebody that you click with, offer to work for them for free. or offer to give them a piece of your deal just for advising you on it. I mean, that's pretty much how Bruce and I got started, and that worked out really, really well for both of us, I think.
Right. And so now we've talked about kind of where to find, how to find, but now let's talk a little bit, because you brought it up a little. Let's talk about how you interact with that person before you have a true relationship built. Please do not reach out to me and ask, okay, Bruce, I heard you on a podcast. I saw you here. Whatever. I'm looking to get into syndicating. How can I add value to you? Don't ask me that. Because Travis Chappell, he's got a huge podcast. I was on his podcast and we were talking about this. And that's been his big thing for a long time, because the way Travis saw it, and I've adopted this exact same thought because it's true. When you do that to me, you have now given me a chore or a task. So now I got to go, what can Freddie do for me? I don't have time to brainstorm how you can add value to me. If I needed something, I would have figured out who to call, what kind of person to hire, what I think you should do. And in fact, I know you should do this. This is the most effective way to do it. Okay. Instead of how can I add value to you? What do you need? Look at me. This is going to sound weird. I'll put it into context. Stalk me. Don't show up at my freaking house and peek in my bedroom window. Stalk me like that. But follow me on social media. See what I'm up to. Go, oh, you know what? He's really good. You know what? I think maybe this could be better, or maybe he hasn't thought about that. We'll do this or do that, and then bring it to me. Say, look, I think, you've got a lot of long form content on your website. This is just an example on your website. But, I don't think you are utilizing that long form content effectively enough. I think you could chop it up into about 10 different deliverable chunks that you can create all kinds of different social media content pieces from that one thing. Okay, fine. Well, then go do that for somebody. And then say, hey, look, I don't want anything in return. I just wanted to show you that this is something that I think would benefit you. That's how Gary Vaynerchuk found D-Rock. That's exactly what happened, right? D-Rock said, hey, I'm really good at this, and here, look what I did for you. He's like, oh, that's pretty cool. You want a job? So just find what you think the value piece is that you can add for that person, and just do it without being asked, without asking them. Now, it's not going to land every time. I would bet 9 out of 10 times it won't land, because either it wasn't what they needed, wanted, it didn't fit them, or maybe they're just a jerk and they don't want you in their lives. I don't know. It's like sales, right? It's a numbers game. Do that to enough people that you look up to, admire, aspire to be like, maybe, and just, provide value without asking.
And look, the amazing thing about our living in the age of social media is that you can send me and Bruce or Gary Vaynerchuk or whoever a DM on Instagram or tweet at them or whatever, and the chances of you getting a response are actually pretty good. I mean, I am very good about responding to Instagram DMs. So, if somebody reaches out and asks me a question, that it works. I mean, just don't be afraid to reach out and bring that value. I mean, follow their stories. Like Bruce said, watch their stories. Bruce is talking about how, he just launched a book. Like, send him a message. Hey, man, congrats on the book launch. That's amazing. Of course he's going to respond to that. You're congratulating him on something that took him, a year of work. Like, he's very excited about that. I think that's, you can organically do that. And I've done that before on the commercial real estate brokerage side, because I started off as a broker. I mean, I would follow guys that I knew I wanted to do business with, and every now and then I would just comment on their photos. I saw something funny, but like, dude, that's hilarious. And then I kept popping up, so they started recognizing my name. And then when I would send them a message, and then they started following me back, and then it organically works. I think that's the great thing about social media.
Right. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so Gerald had a question. I just had an interview 3 hours ago for a commercial agency here in London. I think I got the job. Congrats, Gerald. That's really exciting, man. What advice would you give to someone whose long-term vision is to become an investor?
Go, dude, go. Well, he was talking about commercials, so I'll let you take this one.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Well, I'll run with it. So Gerald, what I would say I mean, the way I always wanted to get into commercial real estate investing, I knew that from day one. I want to be a developer. So I figured starting out I fell into commercial real estate, so it's a little bit different. But starting out as a commercial real estate broker is actually a phenomenal way to become a developer because you learn it from literally the ground up, how to find the tenants. So, what I did, the way that I started getting into investing, I mean, there's a reason that the word broke is the majority of broker. You are making a bunch of cash, you're a 1099 employee, you're paying 30% of that to the government, and you're always running out of money. So what I started doing was I lived off of the leasing commissions, and I started investing all of my sales commissions. So if I was only making $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month off of leasing, that's all that I had that month. I mean, I just mentally separated the sales commissions from myself personally. But the best thing that I did was start rolling my commissions in as equity into investments. That's how I bought my first deal. Technically zero out of pocket. You can go find that video in my library, how I bought my first deal with $0. But that's what I did. I put a property under contract. I'm a commercial real estate broker. I've got my real estate license. I can legally get paid 3% or whatever percent that is that I negotiate on a deal. And so I didn't technically have any money out of pocket. Found a couple of investors, rolled that commission in, and that's how I did it. So I would, Gerald, what I would focus on is get really good at leasing. Get really good at finding tenants, negotiating deals, because that's what really helps springboard me into being a successful commercial real estate investor, is that I can put a vacant building under contract and I can go find the tenant to lease that building before we even close. I've done that multiple times. And that's how I create a significant amount of value for me as the GP, but also for my investors. Because there's so much room for high returns in higher vacancy properties, but you've got to know what you're doing on the leasing side. But also learn how to underwrite. Find an investor and learn as much as you can from them as to how they look at deals, and then start trying to bring them deals. I mean, that would be, I know that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but that's what I would do.
Right. And talking about the underwriting, if you're working for a large commercial firm, they will likely have their own debt division. Well, those guys underwrite deals all day, every day. So maybe you can just go have drinks with one of the guys in that division one night, go do a happy hour and just, get to know them very well and start picking their brain, somebody within your own firm, possibly.
Yeah, for those that aren't familiar with those, they're typically called capital markets. And those are the guys that they kind of source debt and equity for relatively large projects. I mean, we engage CBRE Capital to help us raise the debt and the equity for that 1.5 million square foot deal that Bruce was talking about, just because that's really large. But those guys specialize in that, and they have 5 people on their team, analysts that are constantly looking into new data and underwriting these projects. So that would be a great way to learn.
I agree with that completely. One thing I want to talk about too, though, that you mentioned is this was on Facebook the other day. Somebody was all upset because, how did the deal sponsors think they could do this without any money? We have all the risk because they don't have any money in the deal. They say I want to roll my commission in. Well, somebody that was actually an experienced sponsor said, "Now hold up, you're right. There's no money directly out of pocket." But they forego. I never had to say that in the past tense, but they have foregone. There you go. Okay. Remember, I'm a college dropout. All right. So
hey, same here.
They gave up their commission and rolled it into the deal. So while there was no direct money out of their pocket, there was still financial implication there, because where it could have been, maybe a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 commission check. Well, now they didn't get to put that in their pocket. Go have a phenomenal vacation, down payment on a personal residence, maybe a great dinner for them and their wife. So there's still something in the deal for that person. They still have skin in the game. So please don't lose sight of that, guys.
Yeah. They also still have to pay tax on those commissions, by the way. I mean, that is income. I had to pay tax on those commissions. So technically I did come out of pocket, I guess.
All right. Sorry, this is a segue, right? This is the jumping off point for me.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right,
yeah, yeah.
Bruce,
You
we
know where
get
we're
it. You
going, I
pay
guess.
nothing to the government.
So commercial real estate, one of the reasons we do what we do is because the favorable tax advantages. It's legal and it's set up to promote and get capital investment in neighborhoods going. They want people making investments, so we have all kinds of tax benefits to us. So a buddy of mine, his name starts with a T and ends with a cobble. We were talking. Oh, this is a while back, and he was he was talking to me about his tax bill for the year. I was like, what? It was pretty hefty. But okay, two things. That means you had a really, really good, successful year. So really, dude, celebrate the fact that you owe that much. Okay, now that we've talked about that, patted you on the back, dude, you're doing it all wrong. He's like, what are you talking about? I said, look, some of you are going to hate me for this. It's to express a concept. So just take it for what it is. There was 3 years ago that my wife and I made comfortably 7 figures for the year, and we got a $12,000 tax refund. And I was telling Tyler this story. He's like, what? I said, you're doing it wrong. And what I meant by that is you don't own enough commercial real estate. That's all I meant by that. Tyler, I'm partners with Tyler just to sing his praises because I've told him, I trust your business acumen, and I know I'm involved with you, not because of our property management company, but because of you as a human being. Tyler is just one of the biggest rock stars I've ever met in my life. He's the age of my daughter, basically. So he's basically my third kid. He's my son.
I'm the favorite child, by the way.
Dude, that's what you told my daughter the other day. She argued with you, but no, Ty. Yeah, I don't know. I got on the sappy side track, but no, it's again, because I said Tyler was doing it all wrong. Tyler doesn't do it wrong. He just wasn't owning enough commercial real estate. And as somebody that is in his inner circle, I can have those types of conversations. He has things like that to say to me when he thinks I'm doing something inefficiently, and I thought he was doing something inefficiently, and now he's going to get to a point where he doesn't pay taxes every year. It's that simple.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, and Bruce is totally right. I mean, so the thing is, I own a commercial real estate brokerage, right? So that's all 1099 income, and you don't really. There's almost no amount that I could write off from a brokerage to shield that income. The only way to do that is through owning commercial real estate and being able to depreciate those assets and have all of those write-offs carry everything else. So that was 2019. I bought 4 buildings that year, but they were largely vacant, and we were undergoing renovations and stuff like that. And so hopefully this year 2020 will be a little bit different. I think 2021 will finally be the year where I have enough depreciation and write-offs from real estate to really shield that income. And that's the amazing thing, right, about real estate. It's one of the many advantages of investing in this asset is that you shield that income because, buildings are depreciating. I mean, it's all legal. It's all per the IRS code. But, buildings aren't getting any younger. It's not like they're sitting there repairing themselves. I mean, they are depreciating assets to a certain extent. Physically, they are appreciating assets in the financial sense. But, yeah, when Bruce told me that, I was like, God, I got so mad. I was like, you kidding me, man? You paid less in taxes than I did.
Yeah, then he had his accountant call my wife, said, no, hang on. Tyler's telling me this. I think I understand what you're talking about. Well, what's the story? So we talked to her. She goes, "Oh, yeah, I know that." So yeah, we just gotta get him owning more commercial real estate. And dude, we are way on the way to doing that. So making really good progress there.
It's gonna be a good year. Well, that's a great spot for us to wrap up this episode. Next one, we'll dive into who I am. I'll tell you guys a little bit about my story, and then Bruce, what do you think about the episode after that, talking about our predictions for 2021? Like how the market
I think that not just predictions. I like that a lot, but also that'll kind of to partner with that. We'll talk about COVID because people are always asking me about that.
Yep.
How are you buying right now? If you are, how are you taking that into consideration? Are you selling? Is this a good time? Is anybody paying rent? So we'll go into some of that stuff too. I like that a lot.
That's awesome. All right, guys. Well, don't forget to follow us live. Feel free to drop your questions in the comments whenever we're doing the live shows. If you're listening on the podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you guys next time.
See you.